The foot-tapping anthems, the beats, the iconic beginnings. Music draws you in. Let's dive into the melodies that shape our lives. A journey through the symphony of your mind.
Welcome to Your Brain on Music, a podcast that asks the question, what really happens in your brain when you listen to music? Here's your host, Anthony Cirillo.
All right, well, thank you, Jim Nance, for that introduction. My name is Anthony Cirillo, and I am the founder of Sage Stream, a live stream interactive music network. We'll have a little commercial on that later. But that became the genesis for exploring music and the mind, and now actually having this podcast, Your Brain on Music. We're in what I call my artist series, where we interview different artists who are on Sage Stream and some of the things that they are doing and how music impacts their life. And so today I'm actually very excited to have singer at large, Johnny Blair. He's been playing music professionally since the 80s, having toured internationally, released many recordings, worked with major artists. However, over the years, one of his joys is to perform for residents in assisting living homes. A quote from his bio on Sage Stream, it says, "I played the Royal Albert Hall, Disney, Las Vegas, cruise ships, temples in India, and little places all over the world, but there's something special about playing for our seasoned citizens." Frankly, he's incredibly modest. So I'll let him tell you some of the artists he has played with, because I haven't even mentioned those. And that's an amazing group of people there. Sometimes bragging rights are cool. And you can find out more about him at johnnyblairmusic.com. So let's welcome in Johnny Blair as soon as I change the scene here. All righty. All right, Johnny, welcome to the show. I hope that introduction was appropriate, but we always start off with tell us a little bit about yourself, and please do a little bit of the bragging rights so people know the caliber of the talent we have on Sage Stream, which is quite remarkable.
I've been playing music since the 70s. Well, actually, when I was a kid in the 60s, in front of people. When you get in front of people, it's a different story, as you know. But I didn't start really making serious records and putting them out there and signing up with record companies all until the 80s. And I had a solo career rolling, and in time, I was asked to collaborate with different people, a lot of independent artists. And then fast forward to the 90s, I met Davy Jones of the Monkees, who coincidentally lived near me in central Pennsylvania. And it seems an unlikely place, but he had a horse farm near there. And I was working in a pretty substantial recording studio. It was kind of a getaway studio. The owner of the studio had worked for Whitney Houston and mixed some of her gold records. And he just took some of the money back and set up a studio in Pennsylvania. And that's how I crossed paths with Davey. And that studio didn't work out, but Davey just kept using me. And next thing you know, I'm off playing music with them and doing videos and all kinds of things, which led to working with the Monkees. And I've worked on many Monkees spin-off projects as well, with the 1996-97 reunion with all four original members. And then I did a full international Monkees tour as well. Every so many years, they'd get together, have these big reunion concerts and fill stadiums again, The records would go back out and people start buying them again because those songs, they had so many hits. And then I keep in touch with that. I've also played with David Cassidy, who came into that orbit on some Davey solo gigs. They would collaborate and do share bills. Was picked up by Al Stewart one time to do a few shows. Al Stewart, You're the Cat, and Time Passages. Also worked with Buddy and Julie Miller. A lot of people haven't heard of them, but their fingers are all over Nashville. So if you go on Wikipedia, look them up, you'll see this who's who of Bob Dylan to Emmylou Harris and everybody, T-Bone Burnett, everybody that they've been involved with. Elvis Costello, Nick Lowe, on and on and on. So I worked with them for for a while. And some other folks I can't think of right now. The solo career is still going. And in fact, I'm finishing a new record now and reissuing an old one simultaneously. But to bring this to Sage Stream in 2017, I was in an assisted living home with my fiance. We were watching this duo do American standards, entertaining the people there. It was a very nice care home. It was very upscale. I was looking around thinking, this is like a really nice hotel. I could get used to this. But she was shopping for a place for her father. So we're sitting there and she said, like this, nudge, nudge, hey, you could do this, meaning what those guys are doing. And I looked at it and said, yeah, I actually know some of this material. So it's 2017. I built up a client roster in the San Francisco Bay Area, a little bit. I've done a little bit in Southern Oregon, but mostly Bay Area. About 40 care homes on my call list. And there are a handful that just keep bringing me back, sometimes more than once a week. I started doing it the same reason I do any gig. I want to make some money and keep my chops up and, of course, entertain people. And, for my own reasons, I like to give that way. But it grew into something else. It became this overwhelming, deep spiritual connection. Not that I get in the private worlds of these residents. I do see sides of humanity and sides of people in these places because they're disabled. Some of them much younger because they had strokes or whatever. But most of them are older, been around, having dementia, different things going on. And I would go in there, and the biggest one, I had many, 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 many stories. I'm going to start a blog on my Patreon page to accommodate these stories. But the biggest thing I see on the repeat visits, I'll go in first week, it'll be a woman or someone, a man, sitting in a chair, just totally out of it, maybe even drooling. Second week, I come back. They look up at me. Oh, they know who I am. Third week, I come back. They're like, okay, man, bring it on, like that kind of thing. Fourth week, hi. They talk. And I've had it where even the attendants at the care homes would say, she never talks. And all I did was I just got up. I do jokes and slapstick. I pull on my tie and act like I'm hanging myself and make funny noises and fall down and, do Three Stoogie kind of stuff, Charlie Chaplin kind of things, and tell stupid jokes. But that, I tell you, it's so amazing. I would have never imagined it. And I love playing in a nice room with good lights and a PA and a bunch of people that are there to listen. But this is different. This is way more heart work. It's definitely, a friend of mine said, it's the Lord's work. And I don't make big money doing it. That's not the point. It's the point of going in and serving, and other dividends have come out of it. My voice is in tip-top condition. I learned a bunch of songs that come in handy for other venues. And so it's an ongoing learning experience. I never thought I'd be doing it since 2017. And one last note is that I've recently expanded this platform to recovery meetings and places that are helping people get out of homelessness, human trafficking, addiction, abuse, all those different things. And this is people who have been incarcerated more than once, pretty hopeless. And they're at the point where either you finish the program or you're going to die.
Right.
So I almost on a reptilian level of communication rise up, and all of a sudden, they've had fentanyl. Fentanyl gives you a hunch. They're sitting up now, things like that. And just walking up to say, man, thank you so much for coming down here, and just touching people. And I don't make a dime for doing those things. Not even gas money. I just go down there and do it because it's my own heart. And once again, it has other dividends. I feel deeper spiritually. I feel better as a musician because I'm singing all the time and playing all the time and learning. And what is life about except for growth?
Right. And this is kind of the heart of the artists that we have on Sage Stream. It's pretty amazing. And um, I was in bands in the '70s, and it was the mid '90s when I got out of a band and a nightclub, and said, "Well, what am I going to do with my life?" Because I was at a full time gig during the day, and started going into continuing care retirement communities at the time. And yeah, it overwhelmed me and became this next part of my healthcare career as well as my music career. So I certainly have particular stories of particular incidents where I knew that even if I wanted to run away from it and go back to my hospital work or just go play in a band somewhere, I couldn't abandon the mission, which sort of gets to this next question. You've alluded a little bit to the gentleman who over 4 or 5 weeks spruced up, but do you have a particular story of maybe one person with dementia or a caregiver maybe that has been in the community, or somebody with a personal story how your music has impacted them? Obviously, you impacted that gentleman just by your presence and him getting to know you. But how are there any particular stories of where a song or an incident that happened with music just is something that you won't forget?
I cry at some of these these events, and I'm not expecting it either. There's one song I can guarantee I'm going to cry, which is Johnny Ray's "Cry." I have a deep connection to that song, but there are, let me narrow it down to one person. The first one that pops to mind is this woman named Betty, and she's blind. She's from Texas, and she's very poor short-term memory. Her long-term's pretty good, which is common. And I go in there, and she always has a styling wig, really cool sunglasses, and some kind of really snappy print dress, like a tiger print or something like that, or leopard or whatever. And I always do Deep in the Heart of Texas, and she perks right up, and she she claps. Her clapping is really good. She gets everybody else doing it. Her rhythm and stuff is right on. She sings, and now she's gotten so used to me. She knows my jokes. Like, she tells the punchline before I can say it. But that particular person, she was pretty pleasant with the attendance as far as I could tell, but she became even more. And now, and she's blind and can't walk that well. She needs help getting up and stuff. So she gets people going. And it's good to go in any venue where you can see people, oh, they're the rabble rousers, they're the instigators, they're going to get people engaged here. So
I wanted to ask you, I wanted to circle back to your roots. You gave us some of the history, but like for me, my dad wanted me to play guitar. He somehow thought, I guess he could sing. I don't know, because I never knew him that well. And he bought this guitar and had me take lessons, and I hated it. So I'm 10 years old. Well, he died when I was 11, and the guitar was sitting behind the door, like when I was 12. And I'm like, I picked it up, and then I never looked back. So there was some divine intervention, I think, there, that I didn't throw the guitar out. But and we always listened to Sinatra and Dean Martin and the Great American Songbook. So I had great exposure to music. Thankfully, they played music all the time in the house. But what is your origin story that way?
on my mother's side, my grandfather, the maiden name is Wilson. Grandfather Wilson was a vaudeville entertainer who could sing. He gave it up, but it was a group called the Algonquins. That was the name. It was a mostly a summer thing where they would travel around, and it was kind of like the Mickey Mouseketeers in some ways, minus the ears. This is going back very early 1900s, and he did that and actually got some notoriety. He's a song and dance guy. So the entertainer side, if it's genetic, was handed down. It skipped a generation because most of my aunts and uncles, they play the radio or the, or the iPod or whatever they're using. Uh, then on my father's side, both my grandfather and my father played music. My grandfather was also semi-pro. He was a conductor of brass band back when early 20th century. Again, brass bands were a big thing. Every town had one, and you always had something to do. So he did that. And so when I was a kid, my grandfather Wilson died when I was young, but I didn't know any of that until recent years. But when I was a kid, my grandfather Blair babysat me and would play his classical records. He was a hard guy. He was uh, probably abused when he was a kid. He was emotionally rude, lack of another word, but he was also tough. He was very tough. He lost a lung in the First World War, mustard gas. He outlasted spinal meningitis and other major illnesses. He still lived, he cracked 80 before he died, and he would go out every day and turn dirt in a field. You see, he was a gardener by hand, walked to the grocery store, didn't take a car ride, carried groceries back 3 miles. So he was somebody to be admired for his tenacity. And when he played music, he was he was chill. He finally he was a human being after all this rudeness to people and tough stuff. So my dad uh, dabbled in the guitar and he sang. He did amateur opera in Florida, and he's very proud of that. And he always had records playing. He always had the radio was always on and records, and he had a little record collection. And I remember Ray Charles, Motown, Tony Bennett, Dave Brubeck, mostly R&B and jazz and that sort of thing, and crooners. He liked the crooners. So fast forward to later, I just always hung out with musicians. There were always records around. There were always pianos around. That is also from the era when there were more of these upright pianos left over in the homes, because early 20th century, that was your entertainment center. People bought sheet music, sat down around a piano, and did songs. So a lot of them were still around in old houses, and I visit aunts and uncles. That was right where I went. They'd close the door and let me do my playing, but uh, they knew I wasn't out running around getting into trouble. They could hear the piano. And then eventually guitars came along because they were in the 60s, especially starting to show up everywhere. And I picked that up.
And now this message.
Introducing SageStream, a dynamic platform offering live, interactive, real-time music video streaming tailored for older adults. Here's how we elevate the experience. Enjoy a rich variety of live performances, complemented by rebroadcasts and a comprehensive archive of past shows. Access over 100 top artists from around the world, including sought-after talents like Ben Morrow, guitarist for icons like Cher and Lionel Richie. Explore a wide range of musical genres such as jazz, rock, blues, classical, standards, opera, and beyond. Engage directly with artists through song requests and personalized acknowledgments, fostering connections through chat and text interaction. No hardware necessary. Simply sign in with a username and password from any device or smart TV, ensuring hassle-free accessibility. Keep your loved ones connected and engaged, combating isolation and fostering a sense of community. Elevate their quality of life with exciting and uplifting musical experiences that bring joy. Senior living providers offering SageStream provide many benefits. According to a University of Michigan study, 4 in 5 older adults watch musical performances on the internet. They report stress relief, relaxation, joy, improved mental health, memory stimulation, and enhanced motivation and energy. SageStream saves planning time. It is a powerful sales tool and boosts net promoter scores. Having SageStream readily available proves invaluable in various scenarios, such as when entertainers cancel, during health emergencies, and for filling challenging time slots. SageStream, where music meets connection, enhancing lives one tune at a time.
So what is your iconic song choice and why?
Space Oddity by David Bowie. And why is a long answer. It dropped when I was mid-teens and going through a lot of stuff at home, and music was always my safety zone at that point. So when it came along, it was very lavish and it sweeps you off your feet. And the orchestration, the keyboards were by one of my favorite keyboard players then and now, Rick Wakeman. And and then the story it tells, it's this open-ended story about Major Tom, an astronaut who becomes a pop star. And not because of his design, just because that's what happens when astronauts get in the media, and all of a sudden everything from their breakfast cereal to what kind of shirt they wear and everything becomes discussion. So in the song, he just goes off into outer space. At the time, people thought it was a song about failure, futility, like Hamlet. He just gave up. But if you listen closer and look at the arc of Bowie's career, how he reintroduced and introduced characters, he didn't die. He entered some sort of alternate cosmos. You could call it time travel or whatever. It's up to the imagination. Maybe inner cosmos met outer cosmos, and that's where it reaches me. This stimulated my imagination and made me feel like I was connected to something bigger than my own little world of problems. I think that happens a lot with people. They find a song that speaks right to them, and whatever they're going through. I just got fired from a job. Then they hear Kathy Mattea walking away a winner, stuff like that. So yeah, for me, it was the combination of the technological and creative whirlwind of the song itself with the underlying implications in the lyrics speaking to me as a troubled young person feeling better about myself.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. So we're going to move into our what I call my lightning round, where I'm going to throw a bunch of questions. You've seen them, so you can answer what applies to you, and if something doesn't, we move on. But so, do you have a favorite type of music?
Where do I start? Depends on what day you ask me. I find things to like in all styles, but fallback would be my primal influences, which would be 60s British invasion rock, rockabilly, early rock and roll. I'm doing a lot of Little Richard and Fats Domino and Elvis, 50s Elvis in the care homes these days. Then I like 70s progressive rock, some Americana. Johnny Cash is one of my favorites, and he's kind of his own. He's kind of like talking about a skyscraper, just he's his own planet. I'm a fan of the contemporary tango music, which is more of a European thing, and those are that would be gravitational pull. Since you threw that question, people ask me what's the greatest album of all time. I said depends on what day you ask me.
Yeah, I answered the same way. So and you alluded to this, but was that the type of music you listened to when you were young?
The earlier ones, yeah, that's what I had the most exposure. I heard country, but I didn't really listen to much of it except Johnny Cash. And I got big into jazz.
Do you have a favorite singer or band, or does that also depend on the day?
My favorite British rock band is Roxy Music, which would also be Brian Ferry. If someone says, well, they're not the best, I said, I didn't say that. I said it was my favorite.
Right.
So Beatles blow everybody away. And I have a lot of groups I love and have probably owned all their records at some point. But they're my favorite British rock band. My favorite American rock band is the Beach Boys and Brian Wilson. And then that gets tricky too, because if someone said, who do you like solo albums do you like better, Brian Wilson's or Dennis Wilson? I'd say Dennis Wilson. But anyway, so those are
Sure.
two answers.
Awesome. So I was raised Catholic, though I never sang in the choir, but sometimes your religion affiliation, and if you don't have any, fine as well, sometimes influences music as well for people. People have started out singing in choirs or at church. Any of that apply to your situation?
I'd say by compelling me or repelling me in some situations. We didn't go to church that much, and when the hymns and those things came around, it was just they just kind of sat there, kind of like a standing wave for me. They didn't move me. They didn't make me run either, but it didn't. Yeah, it didn't make me want to play music. I appreciated it. Then later, and I identify as a Christian, the Jesus movement. All of a sudden, you had these guys like Larry Norman doing rock and roll with those types of lyrics. And then that became more contemporary with U2 and different people who could put their faith in there without proselytizing. That would be something that interests me. And I still look for that because there are a lot of people who are of faith, but they don't have like Christian evangelical stamped over their promo photo. Because why? It just puts people off. It doesn't engage conversations. It probably makes 9 out of 10 people go somewhere else. So I'd rather they get it started through the music, and then if they have questions or want to know more about what I was motivated to sing about, then I can talk about
You could
that.
talk about it, sure. So, the last few artists I've interviewed have been New York based, so they've had easy access to Broadway and things like that. Any exposure to Broadway, opera, classical, anything that's influenced you as well?
I've been in musicals, both as an actor, singer, and in the pit playing the
Oh wow,
tracks. I
cool.
Godspell for a short period. That came about because someone got sick or something. And they called me in with very short notice, and I had to just play it like off the cuff. And we did it. And unfortunately, I knew a couple of songs already, but the symphony experience, I played with symphony in Pop's concerts. I did several with Davy Jones and some other ones where they were doing pop rock songs and wanted me in there just to play piano or bass or whatever it was. Then I worked for a symphony for 6 years, and it wasn't exactly music, it was marketing. And that is a whole nother story because what I did was I know how to promote a rock act. And most of the people in symphony are at this Olympian level of achievement, rigorous practice, lots of academic study, and so on and so on. And I applaud them for that, but they don't think about marketing. They don't think, how does this look to someone that goes to ball games and doesn't think about Beethoven and
Right.
so on and so on. So I basically showed them ways to apply these rock and roll tactics to. It's easy to get people to go to a rock show from a ball game, but to symphony, and some of that music was esoteric. It'd be like Shostakovich's Third Cello Concerto and things like that. These are not easy pieces for people to digest.
Right. Do you have or have you had any favorite TV shows or movies where the themes or the music particularly stuck out at you that if you sang like Halloween's coming, if I go da 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 da, everybody's going to know what I'm talking about, that kind of thing. How about you?
More movies for me, because where I grew up, we only got two channels, and you had to go out in the yard and move the aerial around to get. Sometimes you get two and a half if the weather was good. And so I didn't see a lot of the pop culture things. I saw Star Trek and reruns, and there's a theme song. Every time you do that, dun, dun, you can start opening up the discussion to space and frontiers and maybe have parody or something.
Sure.
But I'm a big fan of movie soundtracks and mostly the film noir, which tend to vamp off Gershwin and Elmer Bernstein and all these people that have done countless movie themes.
So, what was your first concert?
I remember seeing garage bands and school kid bands in grade school, but the first significant concert was at a college. I didn't buy tickets. I was too young, didn't have the money, but it was a guy named Buzzy Linhart, Linhart. You can look him up on Wikipedia. He was a contemporary of Jimi Hendrix and later got into writing pop songs with Bette Midler. And he played vibes. He was a rock and roll vibe player, and he had such joy and exuberance on the stage. It was a full out rock band. It was all these New York guys that were had chops, you know. And then at the end of the show, for some reason, a friend of mine was asked to drive him to the airport. So I got to meet him. And he was the first significant, I guess, rock star at the time. He had a record deal and was on college radio. He walked up and he treated me like his old buddy. And he was so thankful that we listened to him. And that was how that set for me the model how to treat your fans. So that was the first big one that I remember.
Awesome. All right, so these are really fast questions, and if they don't apply, just say next. What do you listen to when you're in the car?
Generally, whatever comes on. I've been listening a lot to the news lately because of election year, but the long trips is when I catch up on CDs because streaming is erratic. It's a lot of fun. Anything flies in my head, I could probably find it. My fiance's good finding things, but that's when I do my CD listening, and I'll just plug a group from Sweden that I like a lot right now called Deportees. And it's been a long time since I bought a new CD. I like those guys so much. They're smart. They only put 4 of the songs from the album on streaming. The rest of them, you got to buy the CD. So
That
I
is
bought
smart.
the CD, and
Yep. How about music that affects your mood? Like if you're not feeling well, if you're overwhelmed, you need to relax, or you're feeling blue, or you like to celebrate. Any particular music or particular songs come to mind?
that's a good question. And one that ambushes me in a good way is The Harder They Come by Jimmy Cliff. It usually comes around out of nowhere, right when I'm overwhelmed, like what you described, being overwhelmed, a lot going on. And I'm thinking this, thinking that, and all of a sudden, "Ban, diddle-doo, dun, dun, diddle-doo, dun. The harder they come, the harder they fall." It's if you know what the movie that came from and the story behind it, it even has more impact. But anyway, that's one that definitely kicks me into gear.
Awesome. So that's the lightning round. My kind of a last thoughts part. Do you have any recommendation for further exploration into music appreciation or understanding? Because obviously you've started your own journey in that, so you might have a few thoughts.
For some people, just see it just as entertainment. They don't buy it that much. They love music. It definitely affects them, but they couldn't tell you why per se. And they're not obligated to either. They just know it moves them. That's all they need to know. But it'd be good if people could explore, like you picked out iconic songs, and really break it down and maybe be able to create their own story from it. And at the same time, see music as a form of community and connection, whether you're alone in your own world or with a group of people, how it's bonding people together. I think those are really good things for people to consider every time they get a piece of music in front of them and it does something.
Which is a great segue to my last question. So, why do you think Sage Stream and what we're doing is so important?
I think you've done something with technology as well as curating the experience of music in these assisted living homes. In that, what I've seen, maybe it's because the general consensus has gotten better in the last 5, 10 years about what music does for people in these situations of dementia and disability. I think what you've done is moved it to the next level of access. Plus, you've curated really good artists. You've made it so this could really grow and reach people in a no matter what situation. We're not dependent on, oh, I got to find an entertainer. Who do I get and how good are they? And will the people like them and all this? No, you've already curated that and you made it accessible.
Well, Johnny, I thank you for that. And yeah, I do. That roster didn't happen overnight, but then it snuck up on us with the caliber of the people that we had joining. And now I just tell people these are artists that we otherwise be unavailable and unaffordable to most people. So And then, if you use the interactivity correctly and participate, it is going to become a form of music therapy and almost be as good as live. And you can even ask Connie Tomaino from the Institute for Music and Neurologic Function about that, because she actually talks about live streaming in her book. But that's for another day. So I just want to say, JohnnyJBlair.com. Johnny J. Blair, thank you so much for being the first, literally one of the first people to raise your hand to want to be interviewed. And we will see you on a future Sage Stream show.
Alrighty. Thank you for having me.
Here's this episode's tip for incorporating music into your everyday life for health and wellness, brought to you from Connie Tomaino, the co-founder and executive director of the Institute for Music and Neurologic Function.
One of the things we know is that rhythm can help enhance the way we move. And some people may have issues with balance. They may have trouble, shuffling their feet or stumping sometimes. And that irregular walking can actually be improved by walking to music with a strong rhythmic beat. And you could think of, rock songs and pop songs that have a really good steady groove to it, that can organize the way you move. And we do know through research that walking to music can actually help with things like a better proprioception, helping you move in space. It can also help with reduction of falls. So if you have balance issues, really intentionally moving to music, walking to music, organizing the way you step in time can have carryovers that improve your walking overall and can help reduce the incidence of falls.
Here is this week's listener's musical memory.
But I think the most iconic song, and the first thing that came to mind, and it's not necessarily my favorite song, but I would say Yesterday. And visually, he's not giving you much.
Mm-hmm.
But emotionally, there's so much there.
Yeah,
with the music and the chords and the spaces, and psychologically, when I talk about making that mind bridge, everybody can put themselves in their own shoes. You can open up your own scrapbook and say, oh yeah, that was that divorce, and that was that thing, or boom, 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 boom. I had choices A and B, and I took choice A, and if I took choice B, I'd still be there. That yesterday would be my today and my tomorrow. So, and again, musically, the song was so perfectly, simply written. And then the genius of George Martin,
right?
Going neoclassical on it. It was so striking. And the two melted together are so melancholy. And I keep using melancholy because it's not sad. It's not depressing. It's just puts you in that it doesn't tear at your heart. It just kind of, it's just like this big emotional sigh and psychologically,
sure.
Woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Your Brain on Music was written, produced, and created by me, Anthony Cirillo, with original music from Ariel Soul, a great harpist. You can find him at arielsoul.com, ARIELSOL.com. Please subscribe to our group, Your Brain on Music, on Facebook. And of course, you can download this podcast from all of the typical and normal podcast providers. So we hope you subscribe to our podcast and listen to it. We'll be featuring many great artists and neuroscientists talking about what happens in your brain when music is played. Until next time, thanks a lot.